Welcome to The Growth Equation. This isn't your typical business podcast. We're keeping it real about the challenges of scaling up, period. I'm Tristan Wright, and I've been there. I've built and scaled my own business. I've sold it. I've learned a ton along the way. Now I'm bringing you the no BS stories of founders who are in the trenches right now, navigating that messy middle. We're talking advertising, marketing, design, creative, branding, the whole 9 yards. It doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur or running a team of 100. Everyone's got a secret sauce, that thing that makes them different, better. We're going to uncover it. So grab a coffee and let's get real. Today we're talking with David from Born, the agency. Welcome, David.
Hi, Tristan.
Really looking forward to having a chat and learning about the name of the business. How did Born, the agency come about?
Well, I have to give full credit to my business partner, Jenny. When we decided to set up an agency together, we spent all day together in Newtown, just talking about what it could be and how it could be and what we believed. And it got to a point of deciding that we will need a name. And so we thought, well, we'll apply the traditional naming process. We'll come up with a long list and we'll give meaning behind them. And then at the end of that, Jenny said, well, actually, I've got a bit of a secret. I've had a name in my mind for the last 10 years. And I'll just tell you, it's Born. And from there, I just loved it. And so there and then we registered Born Agency. And then when we looked for the website, we thought, well, actually, Born That Agency gives us a nice base to scale from and grow from. And that's how that came about.
That's awesome. So when was that?
Born is now three and a half years. So about 4.5 years ago.
Okay. So towards the end of COVID.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. We'd been out of COVID about 6 months and then we were still in that post-pandemic reality.
It would have been an interesting time to be founding a business.
Yeah, it was. We heard a lot of people suggest that it was the wrong time, but I couldn't make sense of that because in times of turbulence, I think the market looks for innovation. It also looks for value. And we knew that we were going to be, to start with, just myself and Jenny, who are two senior experienced marketers who were becoming in essentially at value for businesses. And so we just saw it as a real opportunity that actually we could position ourselves uniquely in a market looking for value, looking for experience, and maybe looking for a bit more agility. So we were warned against it, but in the end, it was a really good time to start.
Yeah, well, look at you now. The business is growing, so definitely a good time. So what's your background? How did you and Jenny meet, and were you working at an agency together prior or?
Yeah, so my background is actually in PR. So I started in London as a media relations specialist, a publicist for many years. And Jenny had worked in kind of big advertising. So Jenny had worked at Havas in the UK. And then we both moved, very coincidentally, we both moved over to Australia in almost the same week. Jenny moved to Adelaide, I moved to Sydney, and we were pursuing careers. Jenny is a creative and then a creative director, and myself eventually in strategy, brand strategy and comm strategy. And then we met at an agency, 6 years ago, 5 years ago now, in Sydney. Jenny was the ACD, I was the strategy director. And we both just hit it off immediately. We just were speaking the same language. We had the same beliefs. Our ideas were coordinated around the same kind of vibe and became fast friends.
That's awesome. And then as I say, the rest is history. You guys were still working full time when you decided to go out on your own?
We were, yeah. So we'd only known each other about 4 months. And I messaged Jenny saying, look, I'm thinking about setting up my own agency. In fact, I'm going to do that. And I'd love to do it with you. I appreciate we don't know each other that well. But if you're willing to take that leap of faith, and Jenny just replied immediately going, yeah, I'd love to. And then we spent a year planning it. So that was the most difficult time because, we didn't want to disrespect an agency we were working in that we really respected and really loved. But at the same time, you're living two worlds, two professional lives. You're working to the belief of that agency while you're also challenging all the assumptions of the industry as a whole to create and construct something new. It was a year of secret meetings and walks around the block.
Yes, that would have been tough. You're building that new business, but
you've got a non-compete as well. So
We did, yeah. But what I'm proud of us for is we never compromised the integrity of the work we were doing at that previous agency. We didn't hold back any ideas. Jenny and I have always had the view that there's plenty of work out there. We're always going to have another idea, or we're always going to improve. So it became difficult because, we were both in leadership positions at this agency, and some of the work we were doing on how we think the industry is moving, we were maybe less forthcoming with, because we were trying to preserve some of that for what Bourne was going to be without having to derail where that agency was going. So yeah, I don't miss that time. I'll be honest, Tristan. I found it stressful.
I can imagine, like you're having to try and give your all to them, but also set up your own business as well.
That's right. One decision that we consciously made was we wouldn't start doing any work at all for Bourne at the time. We wouldn't canvas clients. We certainly wouldn't canvas their clients. And so when we started in February 1st, 2023, we were starting from nothing, from scratch. Then started emailing clients or prospective clients from then.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get your first client?
2.5 weeks.
Okay. So not bad.
Yeah. Well, we had this idea of new business that we would approach it by telling stories, essentially. And, Bourne is the creative agency that believes brands are the great storytellers of our time. That's kind of what we've predicated our belief on. And so we were, enthusiastically emailing stories to brands we loved. And the first client we landed was Unyoked, who do the cabin company, or now the nature company. And within 2.5 weeks, we'd signed them. And then 2 weeks later, we signed Unity Bank, and they got us onto retainer. And we couldn't believe it. It was such a fast start.
Yeah. So you hit the ground running pretty much.
Yeah. It didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like we were running, but when you look back at it now, we were very fortunate to be given, for people to take a leap of faith on us, not just for one project with an agency with no history, no credentials at all, but to then be put on retainer was a leap of faith that we honor and have so much. We're so grateful for that, and the Unity Bank team, we love them for that. We always will.
That's awesome. How long did it take for your first hire?
Yeah, so that was a really big decision, actually, because once we'd signed Unity Bank, we had some guaranteed income. It was a modest, a big retainer for us at the time, but a modest retainer, probably by industry standards. And Jenny and I had to make the decision to essentially take our first risk, which was we could do this work with two of us, or we could start to believe that we have to find new value to grow. And so we decided that with the first check from Unity Bank, the first monthly retainer, we put a job ad up for a junior designer. And so we had Thea was our first hire, who's still with us.
Oh, wow.
And that was about, probably 2 months, maybe 10 weeks into what we're doing. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. So that would have been scary hiring 10 weeks in.
It was scary. I mean, it was because we had the guarantee of the retainer coming in, and Jenny and I were very fixated on, if we were going to hire someone and get them to take a leap of faith on us, we would really want to give them security that their job wasn't vulnerable. And so, we have a philosophy that we don't hire until we have 3 or even 6 months of that role's salary saved. And so we used the first project fee and the first retainer fee to bank the salary for Thea, so which gave us a little bit more security. But it was, again, we kind of couldn't believe we were doing it. It all went from being theory to being real.
Well, you're good at what you do. So when you're good at what you do, work follows.
Well, thank you. I mean, and we've always had to put the standard that we set in front of everything. And not just, Bourne has a very specific point of view, a very specific language with how it thinks about the industry, with how it approaches clients, with how it works and offers consultancy. And I think we always had faith that would work. We didn't know what level it would work to, but we knew that it would work enough to get us going. So we had that confidence as well.
Yeah. So let's fast forward to today. Where are you? Where's the business today?
So the business today, there is 16 of us spread across 2 offices. So we've got a Sydney office, and then we opened an Adelaide office January last year. Jenny's now over in Adelaide and she heads up the team over there, and I'm over in Sydney. We have some 25 clients, something like that at any given time, a mix of retainer and project. We've diversified our service offering, not just from brand strategy and design, but we now offer UX, UI services as well, some media buying services. And Jenny and I started a production company called Last Humans that also sits within the Sydney team. So we've got 4 people that offer production services.
So you've got 16 plus another 4. So you've gone from the 2 of you to 20 in, let's say, 3 years. What's that journey been like, having that, I guess, consistent growth, but managing that growth as well?
To be honest, Tristan, I've not actually thought about it in these terms before until we've been looking back at it in the conversation with you. So it's actually remarkable to look at it on that timeline. I think Jenny and I have always taken the view that no matter what kind of day you're having, if you have a good day or a bad day, you come in and do the fundamentals of the business the next day. And so we've always been very disciplined with new business, with checking in with the team, with checking in on the accounts. And actually that's allowed us, I think, to have quite a balanced management of that growth. The principles are scalable enough that it hasn't been a wild ride. It actually feels like it's been quite slow and steady, even though in this conversation it's not coming across that way, but has allowed us for it to feel slightly calmer.
Well, you've had the guardrails and the rules in place. So to have those guardrails, those rules in place from the start, theoretically, it should be a steady journey.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we have a belief that we hire as well at 90% agency capacity, not when a lot of agencies hire at 110, 120% capacity, which means that as a business, we therefore have slightly lower margin because we're using some of that to hire early, but it means that we can take on more work at a calmer level, which then actually impacts the quality of the work and then the opportunity to grow. And I think we decided that quite early because Jenny and I were analyzing what we thought where the industry model was broken. And that was one of the gaps we identified, or one of the issues we identified was a hiring mistake and a capacity mistake. And that's allowed us, I think, a slightly calmer, steadier growth. I mean, that said, if you ask my wife about this, I'm not sure she'd say it was maybe as calm as I'm explaining it.
What are the hours that you've worked?
Well, that's something that comes back. Jenny and I, we're very strict upon that we only do 9 to 5. Jenny and I do work slightly above those hours. I get in at 7 and then I leave at 5, and Jenny normally works until kind of 8 p.m, but gets in a bit later. But we're very proud actually that we really, I don't work weekends. I very rarely work nights. And that's something that we'll tell to clients when they sign with us as well. Look, we believe in work-life balance. And if you want an agency you call at midnight, that might not be us, because we believe in order and discipline and calm. And I hope that comes through in the working relationship with us.
Yeah. You've got to structure and plan everything. So if you structure and plan the engagement, you're not going to need to do late nights as well.
Well, that's the theory, yeah. And that is absolutely going to be a challenge as we scale, though, Tristan. That is one thing we think a lot about, is how do we maintain. It's much easier to maintain that idea at even 20 people or 16 and born than it will be at 100. Because all of a sudden people are going to have different working requirements. They might want to work overtime. So all of a sudden it becomes, that is something we spend a lot of our time.
You need different layers of management, all of that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And then you're also less in control. So there are times when Jenny and I might pick up some of any extra work to maintain that culture for the team, but that is not also sustainable. And that's something that we're actively thinking about now.
So before this call, you said you've literally just landed some new, or about to land a couple of new big contracts, which means the business is going to need to grow. So what does that actually mean in terms of headcount and look and feel of the business?
No, we're not entirely sure. There is absolutely some. There are some operational gaps we need to fill. So one of them is going to be, we need to make sure that our client service team feel that they've got the structure in order to take on the extra organizational layer. So there will be there'll definitely be a hire there at a more senior level. And we're looking at some junior capacity in the design team. We're really wrestling with what the model of Born is going to look like in general, Tristan. Are we going to focus on a more senior talent dense team that has a higher individual output, but then has less people to share the work around? Or do we look at a slightly more junior structure that allows more senior direction and also people bringing kind of new ideas into the business, or a blend of both? Or the other question on my mind is we need to be really clear on what role AI is playing in our efficiencies and our operations, because we've always used AI. It's always been a part of the way that the business has run itself. But how much do we think that where can we rely on that, and how, and where is it a value add and where is it actually just a distraction?
Yeah, there's so many people that think AI can be involved with everything. And yes, it can, but it can be slower in a lot of areas as well. So It's about how do you actually bring it in smartly into the workflow in the correct areas.
Absolutely right. We're quite unimpressed with AI in general. I think that's the view that we take of it. When we started though, Jenny and I, we paid for ChatGPT and we called it Sharon, and we were like, oh, we'll get Sharon to do it. And Sharon was our first employee almost, because we were paying for that service. AI, when it came out, I think it made us better, and then we got better than AI. And all of a sudden it kind of leveled us up. So now we're into a situation where Born has an idea that if AI can come up with the idea, we never pitch it. But it can solve efficiencies in operations and organization that actually is just absolutely worthy of respect. So yeah, like everyone, we're still trying to figure out exactly how to use it. But that's, at the moment, that's where our heads are at with it. What AI has done for the business creatively is make us really believe in the human spirit and the capacity of human potential. I think it's raised the bar, and we're excited about that much more than we are about the technological innovation.
Yeah, totally. I want to go back to, I guess, the fork in the road that you're at with the type of talent and the direction of the agency, whether it's a senior-led team or a all seniors type thing, or seniors and a few juniors, because they're two very different business models, and one needs more management than the other. So it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on why you might be going one way or the other.
I think we will probably, I'm saying this now, I think we'll probably lean towards slightly smaller, more talent dense teams that have got more experience. I think because we're betting on creativity being moved up the chain in businesses. And I think if we start to compete on execution, we end in a race to the bottom. And I think that's the bet we're making. One of our big missions at Born is to get creativity talked about in the boardroom as a commercial driver. And in order to do that, we're going to have to be able to speak the language of those rooms, and the language of those rooms tends to come from experience. And I think that's how we will look to construct the team in general. And the other thing is we're setting up a London studio in 2 years as well. And so we're having to think about the model there as well. So when Born suddenly becomes multinational, it makes sense for us to have talent dense senior teams working at a higher level and working on higher value projects, rather than a smaller, more junior team competing on price and operational efficiency.
Yep, that's it. And I imagine that you've got the more senior team, you need less management layers as well. So in a sense, they can be a bit more self-reliant.
Yeah, that's right in terms of workflow and workflow management. Where I think management becomes important is maintaining everyone on the same point of view. Yeah. That is something that we think a lot about, because Born has a very specific idea of how marketing and advertising and brand should be executed and its role. And when you bring in people who've got big agency experience or just different agency experience, there's almost a tendency to ask, how are they doing it? And then self-judge your own processes. And before you know it, you're chipping away at what makes, you special or you different. And you're regressing to the mean, and you're taking an idea from here and an idea from there. That's not to say we don't consider how other agencies are doing it with the experience. But senior people sometimes come with that quite strong bias, and we need to make sure that doesn't muddle the integrity of what we're trying to do.
I can see how it would if you hire someone too senior that's been embedded in another agency for too long as well.
Yeah. And trying to break people out of the frameworks they've been working in for years is also very difficult. We face that challenge with people. Some people who've set those frameworks up in other agencies join us and then go, well, I'm proud of that idea. And maybe want to bring some of those ideas over. So there's a balance there of management that's I didn't expect to think about, but has come up as we've hired more senior people.
Do you have a general manager, or is it just you and Jenny? How's it structured in terms of management?
We don't. We have Jenny and I work as the founders and maintain some client leads on some of the bigger projects. And then we have an associate creative director, a strategy director, and a senior creative who sit under Jenny and I as like a leverage layer. People who we absolutely trust can do the work, are brilliant with the clients. And that frees up time for us to grow the business and think about the business. And then we have an account director and a senior account manager underneath them. And then we have execution teams below them. One thing that Bourne firmly believes, though, is we don't really believe in specialisms entirely. It's not as though if our accounts people are the only people that can email a client, that's just a bottleneck through process. That just seems like an error. And particularly, again, at our size, if a client's asking about a piece of strategy work and I know the answer, I can email them to move that forward. And we expect that from the team to be working in collaboration with each other rather than being, isolated in a process.
How do you train people that have come from other businesses where this is my role, this is where I operate in, and they don't like to step outside of that? Have you had that?
It turns out they do quite like to step outside of it. When we give people, when people join Bourne and we say, look, not only are we going to free you up a little bit, we're kind of expecting that of you. We really want this to be, a total collaboration. And you will be given license to chip in on some of the creative executions, or you'll be willing to join the strategy meetings to help contribute an idea in the same way that we'll have a view on how the account should be run. That requires trust and it requires an open mind, but people are really responsive to it. We hear so often that people didn't realize their job could have such an influence outside of what they were doing before.
You want them to feel like they're having an influence on the outcome.
Yeah, they're participating in it. We firmly believe that everyone, if you work in a creative industry, you're already well versed in the language. You are also a consumer in the world of ideas and of products and of services. So you're already a specialist. You just happen to have, one particular role at the end of the day. But no, we welcome that across the business. Best idea wins.
We've heard all the good stuff. Surely it hasn't been smooth sailing. There's been a late night or some lost clients or staffing issues or mistakes made or lessons learned, should we say. What are some of those times you're like, I don't know if I should have been doing this?
No, it hasn't all been smooth sailing. There's been one of the biggest and earliest lessons we learned, well, actually we didn't learn it, we had to be reminded of it quite regularly, was what to say no to. When you start, you're so grateful that anybody's employing you that you worry that you'll never sign another client again. And so we were saying yes to a while to absolutely everything. And we're just not understanding the opportunity cost of saying yes when we should have said no. And there were times when we were working, I was working on a piece of work that was of lower value, but higher time investment from me at the detriment of some of our more high value clients. And at some point we had to recognize that saying no is a commercial driver as much as saying yes. And that actually it's not that we're not grateful for the clients that give us their work or pay us. We absolutely are. But feeling grateful the whole time puts you in quite a subservient position. It affects your consultancy, it affects your ideas. And so we had to learn that, no, we have a value and we're entering into a collaboration. And if we say yes, there's a social contract between us that we respect each other in the work. And that was in year 2 particularly, Jenny and I had to sit down and go, we're going to forego that amount of money to focus on other high value projects or use that time differently. And then the other big learning, and I say this to any person trying to start a business, is understand what transfers and translates into cash flow. If you're not thinking about cash flow, you're thinking about the wrong thing. And that doesn't mean that you should become miserly. That doesn't mean that you should become hyper focused on, necessarily the pennies interactions, the cent interactions. But yeah, for a while we didn't understand cash, for sure.
Because you were invoicing and you might have had 30-day terms, but you had to pay your staff every 7 days.
That is one very specific reason. Also understanding, we at one point were selling services that we didn't actually have the team underneath to service themselves. So the specific example there is we were just selling a lot of production work. But actually we had a team that we'd designed to service brand and creative execution. But we were selling production work and we were winning accounts. How great is that? And the team can kind of work on it. And it was my wife works in growth consultancy. And so she actually worked with Jenny and I for a period of time. And she said, look, I've done an analysis and you're kind of selling the wrong service. But, that was a lesson that we had to learn because, the clients we were winning, it did translate to some creative work, but that's not the team we'd hired. And a lot of that money then was going out the door. And it wasn't revealing itself as cash. And that, thankfully, we realized that lesson fairly early on. And I'm so glad we did. Otherwise, I think we could be, we might not be here today. The number one lesson I'd say to anyone starting a business is knowing what cash is.
Yep. And know your cash, know your margin, know where you're spending your money. As you said, are you selling the best services with the best margin?
And exactly. And do you know what your team is designed to service when you sell it? Because it's exciting selling stuff. Like it's exciting winning something. That is a mistake to get caught up in the excitement. That's naivety.
You've got to win the things that you can deliver upon and provide value to your client and provide value to the business. But you learnt and you're still here to tell the story.
No, we did learn. It's a lesson that we continually remind ourselves of as well. Born has never had to take on any debt. It's never not been a profitable business. But if we hadn't have learned that, as you say, it's a very different story.
Yeah. You've got 16 plus 4 staff at the moment, and you're probably going to scale up a tiny bit more. Typically, this space between 15 to 25 is a really hard area because you're needing to have a bit more leadership and management and your margins are reduced in this size of business. Have you started seeing that or?
We've actually just come out of that. So we found that more difficult around the 10 to 12, 13 actually mark. I have a mentor, Tom Buchan, who was a founder of an agency that I worked at previously. And I remember calling him and him saying that you almost have a choice to make when you set up a business of staying small and making money or being quite big and making money. But you don't make money in the awkward teenage years. Not really. And we were in that for a good, at least a year, and the grand scheme of things, that's not very long. But, we kept saying we're never signing more clients and we never had less money. Because in order to do the work, we needed to take on more people, but the average job value was less because of the size we were at and the reputation that we had. So we absolutely noticed that. But that's where belief and vision played the biggest part, Tristan, because we knew that it was short term. Born is also not a greedy business. We're in this to create great work and to create lives for people and livelihoods and opportunities more than just make money. Certainly that's the case. And we always had that vision and belief. So we knew that if we stuck to what we believed in and we kept trying to change the way this industry operates, we would push through that and then reveal slightly bigger opportunities at the back of that. Yeah, and I'm very pleased to say we seem to have just got through that in the last 6 months or so.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's different businesses, obviously slightly different. You're 12 to 13, some are 15 to 20, but to be able to recognize that and know what those next steps are is awesome.
If I hadn't been told that was part of a journey, or as the process you were describing then as well, I'd have been a lot more concerned. I'd have been really worried about it. But because I was told and I had a mentor that was able to say, look, this is normal. And actually, it's just a strange part of, economic modeling. We were able to work through it rather than panic through it. But I can imagine if you didn't know that was coming, you would be thinking, you wouldn't even know how to construct an answer to the how.
A lot of businesses panic through it and they either shrink back down or go out of business.
Right. They don't. Yes. And you have to be incredibly structured during that time, because if you need to be sure that you've got a pipeline of growth, or that you at least have an approach that will grow to get out the back of it, rather than either over investing or taking on debt or taking on an overdraft to try and fund your way through it. That's a mistake, because you need to also be able to be mature enough to take on the bigger jobs that will come your way. But you learn that through the discipline and the structure that you apply during those teenage years, as it were. That's how it was described to me, at least, that awkward teenage years. That's how you learn how to take on the next big job when it arrives. You also learn the humility of it. You have to learn that as you go through.
Yeah, totally. So one last question. One piece of advice for small business owners. One thing that you wish you knew when you were setting up the business.
It's not as hard as you think it is. I think there's a myth that it will be hard, really hard. And I'm not saying it's easy, but enjoy it. It's a privilege to do it. It's a privilege to set up a business. It's a privilege to be given the opportunity. And you can get stuck in the myth that starting a new business is difficult, and actually it's enjoyable and it's fun and it's interesting and it's challenging. It's not as hard as you think it is. It's more interesting than you think it is. Treat it as the best challenge you might have and enjoy it. I think that's what I would say. Really enjoy it.
Yeah, awesome. What's the best way for people to get in touch if they want to connect with you?
Well, that'd be very kind. Through our website, borntheagency.com, there's a get in touch form. Otherwise, you can always email me directly, david@borntheagency.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Tristan.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into The Growth Equation. If you've enjoyed the show, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps us big time. Catch you next time. And if you want more, head over to evolvetogrow.com.au for show notes and exclusive content.